Chapter 30. Abram in Egypt. Genesis 12, 10-20. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. And it came to pass that, when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld a woman, that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her, and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he asses, and men servants and maidservants, and she asses and camels. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, She is my sister, so I might have taken her to me to wife? Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her, and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. Genesis 12, 10-20. Abram went to Canaan, and we are told, quote, There was a famine in the land, verse 10. He had arrived at the promised land only to be met with a drought that made it impossible for him to remain there with his herds and flocks. Owning no land and without grazing rights except in the now barren common hills, he had to move on to Egypt. At the moment, God's promise did not look very good, but by faith Abraham persevered, and he moved his men and his livestock into Egypt. The episode which follows has commonly led to condemnations of Abram. Schofield himself, both antinomian and lawless, could still call this, quote, Abraham's lapse, end quote. Let us begin, however, by taking Abraham's comments, verses 11-13, seriously. First, Abraham's comment that the Egyptians would kill Abram in order to seize his wife must be taken very seriously. In a familistic culture, adultery is a capital offence, even more consequential than murder. Adultery puts alien seed into a family, and in a familistic culture, this is, humanly speaking, the most grievous offence. Murder takes a man's life, but adultery can shatter his future and give him false heirs. Second, the nature of treason varies from culture to culture. In a familistic culture, it is adultery. In an ecclesiastically oriented culture, it is heresy and blasphemy. In a statist culture, it means giving aid and comfort to the enemy. When a culture shifts, so too does its definition of treason. Thus, in the United States, not too long after World War II, the Rosenbergs were sentenced to death for treason. In recent years, Pollard and Ames have not faced the death penalty because the centrality of the state is a waning doctrine at the present time. Third, Sarai was closely related to Abram and, in the terminology of the day, close female relatives could be called sisters. In some cultures, I have known brother and cousin to be used interchangeably. Fourth, what would Abraham's critics have him do? Should he have defied the Egyptians and said, You will have to kill me first before you can take Sarai? They would have killed him on the spot. Then what good could he do to save Sarai? Abram was no fool. He knew that he was helpless, so that all he could do was to commit the matter to God. Foolhardiness never commends itself to God. Fifth, the obvious fact remains that God delivered Abram and Sarai here and later. And also Isaac, in a like situation, he did not rebuke him, although the commentators do so freely. What Abram feared did happen. No doubt he had told Sarai to remain secluded as much as possible, but she was spotted by some Egyptian princes. They commended Sarai's beauty to the pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. This does not mean that she was at once sexually used. In some countries, then and later, women taken into a palace often went through a long process of physical and ritual purification. Even then, some girls and women lived and died in harems without even being called to the ruler's bed. Meanwhile, Pharaoh, or his men, gave Abram considerable wealth for Sarai in the form of sheep, oxen, donkeys, and camels, and also, quote, men servants and maid servants, verse 16. Abram was now vastly richer. But God plagues Pharaoh's house, quote, with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife, verse 17. Pharaoh somehow learned the cause of this and at once sent for Abram. He accused Abram of deception, verses 18 to 20, but the significant fact is that he asked no return of any of the wealth he had given Abram. Also, he warned his people against doing any harm to Abram. Clearly, he knew that, had Abram not done what he did, Abram would have been killed by Pharaoh's men. There is another important fact here. It would be absurd and unrealistic to believe that what had been done to Abram had not been done to many a man before Abram arrived. Both Abram and Pharaoh knew this. In this case, however, God intervened, and Pharaoh wanted no further judgment from God. Clearly, this man Abram was a prophet or seer of some sort and was not to be meddled with. Egypt at this time was already of powerful stature and military rank. All the same, Egypt still regarded the family as a power not to be readily disrupted. Egypt had moved more quickly than other countries from familism to statism, but it was still sensitive to the importance of the family. Some fine scholars have here resorted to abusive language in describing Abram, one man calling him, quote, base and despicable. What did they want Abram to do? To be killed? How would that have helped Sarai? Abram had more sense and much more faith in God than all his critics. We do not owe the truth to men who seek to do evil. A court of law requires truth, and we must pray there for God's justice. But when confronted by evil men, we owe them nothing. For such men want our truth to further their evil. Abram told the truth, only up to a point.